My sister Jessica got everything handed to her on a silver platter while I spent 32 years being the family disappointment. Until last Thanksgiving when I discovered something that flipped our entire world upside down. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and suddenly everyone goes quiet? That was my entire childhood. Jessica would be getting praised for some mediocre achievement while I'd slip in unnoticed, even when I just won another academic award or landed another promotion at work. But this story isn't about sibling rivalry. It's about the moment I realized my entire family had been living a lie. Let me paint you a picture of our typical Thanksgiving. Picture this: a pristine colonial house in Connecticut, the kind you see in magazines with perfectly manicured lawns and matching seasonal decorations. My parents, Robert and Margaret, hosting their annual production. Because that's what it was, a performance. Jessica would arrive fashionably late in whatever luxury car her husband bought her that year, armed with store-bought desserts she'd claim took her hours to make. Meanwhile, I'd been there since dawn, helping Mom prep the turkey, setting the table, making sure everything was perfect. The dynamic was always the same. Dad would immediately gravitate toward Jessica, asking about her latest vacation to Europe or her husband's newest business venture. Mom would fuss over how thin Jessica looked, insisting she needed to eat more while simultaneously complimenting her designer dress. And me? I'd get a polite nod and maybe a question about whether I was still working at that little company. The Fortune 500 corporation where I'd just been promoted to senior director, but why would anyone remember that? This particular Thanksgiving started like all the others. I arrived early, laptop bag in tow, because I'd been working on a major client presentation due Monday. Jessica breezed in 2 hours late, designer heels clicking on the hardwood floors, carrying shopping bags from Nordstrom and that practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Sorry I'm late, everyone," she announced, as if she just conquered traffic rather than spent the morning at the spa. Michael had an emergency call with Tokyo, and you know how these international deals can be. Dad practically leaped from his chair. "How's the pharmaceutical expansion going? Last time we talked, he mentioned possibly opening offices in 3 new countries." I looked up from the financial reports. I'd been reviewing reports for a merger that would affect thousands of jobs and reshape an entire industry. But sure, let's talk about Michael's pharmaceutical sales territory. "Oh, it's going wonderfully," Jessica gushed, settling into what had somehow become her designated chair at the head of the table. "He's been working so hard, flying all over the world. Switzerland last month, then Singapore. I can barely keep track of his schedule." Mom emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Jessica, darling, you look absolutely radiant. Is that a new dress? This old thing?" Jessica laughed, smoothing down what was obviously a several $1,000 outfit. "Michael surprised me with it yesterday. He said I deserved something special for putting up with all his travel." I glanced down at my own outfit. A nice blouse and slacks that I'd bought myself with my own money from my own successful career. But apparently, getting gifts from a husband was more impressive than earning your own way. The conversation flowed around me like I was furniture. Jessica regaled everyone with stories of Michael's business successes, their upcoming trip to Aspen, and their plans to renovate their already massive kitchen. I tried a few times to contribute, mentioning the innovative renewable energy project I was spearheading, or the industry recognition my team had received. But somehow, the conversation always drifted back to Jessica and Michael's glamorous life. During dinner, Dad raised his wine glass for the traditional toast. "I want to say how proud Margaret and I are of both our daughters. Jessica, you've built such a beautiful life with Michael. Your mother and I are so grateful to see you happy and successful." He paused, and I thought maybe this year he'd actually acknowledge my achievements. "And Emma, we're proud of you too, sweetie. You work so hard at your job." My job? Like I was a cashier at a grocery store instead of a senior executive at a multinational corporation. But I smiled and nodded because that's what I'd been doing for 32 years. After dinner, while I was loading the dishwasher, because somehow that always became my responsibility, Jessica and Mom were in the living room, looking at photos from Jessica's latest vacation. I could hear them discussing the resort, the spa treatments, the private beach. Meanwhile, I was scraping turkey grease off plates and wondering why I kept subjecting myself to this annual ritual. That's when Jessica's phone started ringing. She glanced at it and her face went pale. "I need to take this," she said, stepping out onto the back porch. Now, normally I would never eavesdrop on a family member's private conversation, But something about her reaction made me pause. The kitchen window was right next to the porch, and I couldn't help but overhear as her voice rose. I told you not to call me here. No, I can't discuss this now. Look, the payment will be there Monday just like always. You think this is easy for me? Payment? I found myself leaning closer to the window, my heart starting to race. 15 years, okay? 15 years I've been handling this. No, Michael doesn't know and he can never know. If this gets out, everything falls apart. I nearly dropped the wine glass I was holding. 15 years of what? What payment? What was Jessica hiding from Michael? And from all of us, she was quiet for a moment listening. Then, the account number is the same. Yes, the trust fund covers it, but barely. Look, I have to go. My family's here, and they can't suspect anything. Trust fund? What trust fund? Our family wasn't wealthy. Dad was a retired middle school principal. Mom had been a part-time librarian. We were solidly middle class, nothing more. Where would Jessica get a trust fund? My mind was racing as Jessica came back inside, her composure completely restored. She rejoined the conversation about vacation plans as if nothing had happened, but I noticed her hands were shaking slightly as she reached for her wine glass. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I went through the motions of family conversation, but my brain was working overtime. What had I just overheard? What was Jessica paying for? And where was this mysterious money coming from? I excused myself early, claiming I had work to catch up on. But instead of going home, I drove to a nearby coffee shop and opened my laptop. If Jessica had access to a trust fund that none of us knew about, there had to be a paper trail somewhere. Now, I should mention that my job in corporate finance has given me certain skills. I know how to research financial records, how to trace money, how to uncover information that people would rather keep hidden. It's all completely legal, using public records and databases, but most people don't know how to access these resources. I started with property records. Jessica and Michael's house was worth over $2 million, but the mortgage records showed they'd only put down 20%. For a house that expensive, that's still a substantial down payment. More than most couples their age could afford, especially since Michael's pharmaceutical sales job, while decent, wasn't exactly Fortune 500 executive level. Then I dug into business filings. Michael's company was legitimate, but it was smaller than Jessica had always implied. He was a regional sales manager, not the international mogul she made him sound like. Good salary, sure, but not fly to Switzerland every month money. That's when I started looking into Jessica herself. College records, employment history, any financial documents that might be public. And that's when I found it. A trust fund established in Jessica's name when she was 18 years old. The benefactor was listed as anonymous donor. But the amount made my blood run cold. $2.7 million. I stared at the screen, reading the document over and over again. This trust fund had been paying Jessica a monthly stipend for the past 15 years, substantial enough to fund the lifestyle she'd been living. But who had set it up? And why was it a secret from the family? I dug deeper using every resource I had access to. Corporate databases, financial networks, even some connections from my own work. It took me 3 days of investigation, but finally I found the connection I was looking for. The trust fund had been established by a law firm in Boston. The same law firm that had handled my grandfather's estate 15 years ago. My grandfather, Dad's father, who had died when Jessica and I were in college. We'd been told he had nothing to leave. That his medical bills had eaten up whatever savings he'd had. Dad had even taken out a second mortgage to help cover the funeral expenses. But now I was looking at evidence that Grandpa had actually left a substantial inheritance. An inheritance that had somehow ended up entirely in Jessica's name, with the rest of the family never knowing it existed. I felt sick. Had Jessica known about this money all along? Had she deliberately hidden it from the family while Dad struggled with mortgage payments and Mom went back to work to help make ends meet? While I took out student loans for college and worked 3 jobs to pay for graduate school. But there was more. The trust fund documents included a strange clause. The monthly payments would stop if certain conditions weren't met. The specific conditions were sealed, but there was a reference to ongoing confidentiality regarding family matters. That's when the pieces started falling into place. The phone call I'd overheard. Jessica talking about 15 years of payments, about keeping something secret from Michael. What if the trust fund wasn't just about hiding money? What if Jessica was being paid to keep quiet about something? I spent another sleepless night digging through records, and finally found what I was looking for. Buried in legal documents from 15 years ago, I discovered that my grandfather hadn't just left money. He'd left a confession about my father. The documents were partially sealed, but what I could access painted a disturbing picture. My grandfather had discovered that my father, the man we'd all thought was a dedicated educator, a pillar of the community, had been embezzling money from the school district where he worked. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. Over the course of 10 years, he'd stolen over $500,000 from programs meant to help underprivileged students. Grandpa had found out just before he died. But instead of exposing his own son and destroying our family, he'd made a different choice. He'd used his life savings to quietly repay the stolen money, covering Dad's tracks. But he'd also set up the trust fund for Jessica with one condition. She had to keep the family secret. Forever. The monthly payments weren't just Jessica's inheritance. They were hush money. Payment for her silence about Dad's crimes. I sat in my apartment at 3 a.m, staring at legal documents that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Dad wasn't the honorable man I'd looked up to my entire life. Jessica wasn't the spoiled princess living off her husband's success. She was being paid to protect a family secret that could destroy us all. And I was the only one who didn't know. But that wasn't even the worst part. As I kept digging, I realized that the trust fund was running out. Jessica's panicked phone call made sense now. She'd been living off this money for 15 years, building a lifestyle that depended on those monthly payments. But the money was almost gone, and she was desperate to keep it flowing, which meant she was probably looking for other ways to maintain her silence. I thought about confronting her directly, but something held me back. Maybe it was the investigator in me. Or maybe I just needed to understand the full scope of what I'd uncovered. So instead, I decided to test my theory. The next family dinner was at Jessica and Michael's house. I arrived early, bringing homemade appetizers and offering to help set up. Jessica seemed nervous, more on edge than usual. She kept checking her phone and making excuses to step away from the group. During dinner, I decided to probe a little. Dad, I was thinking about Grandpa the other day. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he'd lived longer? Maybe seen us both graduate start our careers. Dad's face went pale and he set down his fork. Your grandfather was. He was a complicated man, Emma. Sometimes it's better not to dwell on the past. Jessica's eyes darted between Dad and me, and I saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. I just think it's interesting how different our paths have been. I continued, keeping my voice casual. Jessica with her beautiful home and lifestyle, me with my corporate career. It's almost like we each found different ways to be successful. Success comes in many forms, Mom said diplomatically, but I could see she was uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. That's true, I agreed. Sometimes success is about hard work and dedication. Sometimes it's about other advantages, family connections, unexpected opportunities, resources that others might not have access to. Jessica excused herself to check on dessert, and I followed her into the kitchen. Are you okay? I asked. You seem tense tonight. She was gripping the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. I'm fine. Just tired. Michael's been traveling a lot and I've been dealing with some financial planning. Boring stuff. Financial planning can be stressful, I said carefully, especially when you're managing complex accounts or trying to make important decisions about the future. She looked at me sharply. What do you mean? I just know from my own work that financial decisions can be complicated. Trusts, investments, family money. There are so many factors to consider. The color drained from her face completely. Emma, I don't know what you're trying to say. I'm not trying to say anything, Jessica. I'm just making conversation about the challenges of financial management. As someone who works in finance, I understand how complex these situations can be. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically see her mind racing. Finally, she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. How long have you known? Known what? Don't play games with me, Emma. I can see it in your eyes. You know about the trust fund, don't you? I took a deep breath. I know about the money, Jessica. I know about Grandpa's confession. I know about Dad and what he did at the school district. And I know you've been keeping quiet about it for 15 years. She sank into a chair, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking. You don't understand. It's not that simple. Then explain it to me. When Grandpa died, his lawyer contacted me privately. He said there was money, but it came with conditions. I had to promise never to tell anyone about what Dad had done. Never to let it come out that Grandpa had covered for him. So you took the money and kept quiet. It wasn't about the money at first, she said, tears starting to form in her eyes. It was about protecting the family. Dad would have gone to prison. Mom would have been devastated. You were just starting college. How would you have handled learning that your father was a criminal? So you decided for all of us. I was trying to protect everyone. But then the money became part of our life. Michael doesn't know where it comes from. He thinks I inherited it from some distant relative. Our whole lifestyle, our house, everything. It's built on this lie. And now the money's running out. She nodded miserably. The trust fund is almost empty. I've been trying to figure out what to do, how to maintain everything without raising suspicions. Michael would leave me if he found out I'd been lying to him for our entire marriage. I sat down across from her, processing everything she'd told me. Jessica, do you realize what this has cost our family? Dad treated me like I was nothing compared to you, and it was because he was terrified I might somehow discover his secret. Mom has worked herself to exhaustion trying to keep up appearances, never knowing you had access to millions of dollars. I've spent my entire adult life feeling like the family disappointment. I never wanted any of this, she whispered. But once it started, I didn't know how to stop it. The lie became too big, too complicated. What happens now? When the money runs out completely? I don't know. I've been hoping maybe I could find a way to extend the arrangement somehow. The law firm that manages the trust, they've hinted that there might be ways to continue the payments if I can provide additional assurance of my discretion. Additional assurance? Like what? She looked away. They want me to get something in writing from Dad. A formal confession that I can turn over to them as insurance. Proof that I have leverage to keep him quiet about his past. The pieces clicked into place. You're going to blackmail our own father. It's not blackmail. It's complicated. I need to protect my family, my marriage. Michael and I are trying to have children. How can I explain to them that their entire lifestyle was built on a lie? By telling the truth. Easy for you to say. You don't have anything to lose. That comment hit me like a physical blow. Nothing to lose? Jessica, I've lost 32 years of having a real relationship with my parents. I've lost the chance to understand why Dad always treated me like I was somehow less important than you. I've lost the opportunity to help my parents when they were struggling financially, because I never knew you had access to money that could have made their lives easier. The money was never supposed to be for them. It was specifically for me, with the condition that I keep the secret. And you never questioned whether that was right? Whether keeping that secret was worth more than your family's well-being. She was crying now, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks. Every day. I've questioned it every single day for 15 years. But I was 18 when this started, Emma. I was scared and overwhelmed, and I made the best decision I could with the information I had. And now I'm trapped. If I tell the truth, I lose everything. My marriage, my home, my entire life. Michael will never forgive me for lying to him. And Dad could still be prosecuted for what he did. The statute of limitations hasn't run out on some of the charges. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of everything hanging between us. From the dining room, I could hear Mom and Dad talking with Michael about holiday plans for next year, completely unaware that their family was falling apart in the kitchen. Jessica, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to help you blackmail Dad. And I'm not going to pretend I don't know what I know. What are you saying? I'm saying this ends now. The lies, the secrets, the fake family dynamics. All of it ends. You can't tell them. Please, Emma. It will destroy everything. Everything is already destroyed. It's been destroyed for 15 years. We just haven't admitted it yet. But Michael deserves to know who he married. And if he loves you, really loves you, He'll find a way to forgive you for the lies. But that's between you and him. And Dad. Dad needs to face the consequences of his choices. All of them. Including the choice to let his family fall apart rather than take responsibility for what he did. Jessica grabbed my arm, desperation in her eyes. Please. Give me time to figure out another way. Let me talk to Michael first, ease him into it. Let me see if there's a way to handle this that doesn't destroy everyone. How much time? A month. Just give me a month to try to find a solution that works for everyone. I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. And saw someone I'd never seen before. Not the spoiled princess I'd resented for years, but a woman who'd been carrying an impossible burden since she was barely an adult. Someone who'd made terrible choices but had been trying in her own flawed way to protect the people she loved. 1 month, I said. But Jessica, if you don't tell them, I will. All of them. Michael, Mom, everyone. They deserve to know the truth. She nodded, wiping her eyes. 1 month. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've watched my family through completely different eyes. Dad's nervous energy whenever I'm around. His desperate attempts to steer conversations away from anything that might lead to uncomfortable revelations. Mom's quiet sadness, the way she sometimes looks at Jessica with a mixture of pride and confusion, as if she can't quite understand how her daughter achieved such success, and Jessica. Jessica looks exhausted. The weight of maintaining her perfect facade while knowing it's all about to come crashing down is taking its toll. She's lost weight, and there are dark circles under her eyes that even the most expensive concealer can't hide. Michael seems oblivious to the tension, still chatting cheerfully about his business trips and their renovation plans. But I've started to wonder if he's really as unaware as he seems, or if he's chosen not to look too closely at the source of their comfortable lifestyle. Yesterday, Jessica called me. Emma, I need to tell you something. I've made my decision. About what? About everything. I'm going to tell Michael tonight. The whole truth. About the money, about Dad. About why I've been lying to him for years. What changed your mind? You were right. I can't keep living this lie. And I realize that if I truly love Michael, I have to trust him with the truth. If our marriage can't survive honesty, then it's not worth saving. And Dad. I'll tell Mom and Dad this weekend. Together. Let them decide how they want to handle it from there. Jessica, I'm proud of you. Don't be proud yet. Ask me again after I see if my marriage survives the next 24 hours. Whatever happens, you'll be free. For the first time in 15 years, you'll be free to be yourself instead of who you think everyone needs you to be. I just hope myself is someone worth being. It is. Trust me, it is. Tonight is the night Jessica planned to tell Michael everything. Tomorrow, I'll find out if my sister still has a marriage, or if she's about to lose everything she spent 15 years trying to protect. But regardless of what happens, I know that our family will never be the same. The carefully constructed illusion we've all been living in is about to shatter completely. Dad will have to face the consequences of choices he made decades ago. Mom will have to grapple with the reality that the daughter she thought she knew has been living a lie. Michael will have to decide if love is stronger than betrayal. And me? I'll finally get to find out what it's like to be part of a family that deals in truth instead of secrets. It might be messier, more complicated, more painful than what we had before, but it will be real. The funny thing is, I spent so many years feeling like the outsider in my own family, wondering why I never quite fit in with their dynamic. Now I understand that I was the only one who wasn't playing a role. I was the only one being genuine, and that's exactly why I felt so out of place. Sometimes the person who seems like they don't belong is actually the only one who's being real. Sometimes the family disappointment is just the family truth teller in disguise. Whatever happens next, at least we'll all finally know who we really are. And maybe, just maybe, we can start building something authentic on the ruins of all these beautiful lies. The hardest part about family secrets isn't keeping them. It's realizing that everyone you love has been keeping them from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever discovered that your family wasn't what you thought it was? Share your experiences in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that dive deep into the complicated truth of human relationships.